Hello and welcome my partners in crime, and thank you for joining me again today for another true crime. Now over the next 20 days I'm going to be doing 20 cases, one a day for 20 days, and this is to promote the Missing Persons campaign. Now, but first of all today, this is case 1, and this is a case, terrible case really, unsolved, quite an old case, but it is of April Fabb. Now, one of the subscribers and someone that's messaged me also about this case, to do this case, so thank you very much for bringing this case to light, and it's going to kick off this 20 days of really highlighting cases of the missing. Now, you can donate to any missing persons charity. They really need your assistance. It helps, really. It helps with the advertising. On my Facebook page on Murder Analysed, we have a donation, and it goes straight to then the Missing People's Fund. You can donate to that. So this whole cases over the next 20 days. There'll be others in between, but the missing cases are done between 1 to 20, and they will only be about missing and people that have been missing for not so long sometimes, or quite a long time. But Christmas is a terrible time of year, you know, for lots of people for lots of different reasons. But it's also worse when you are waiting for someone, a child, a loved one, to come home, and they haven't been coming home for many, many years. And Christmas is a very dark time for them families. And so if you can help in any way, even by sharing out these videos, making it known, and if you know something about any of the missing cases that we are doing, please make what you know, tell someone. As I said, and I always say, it can be sometimes the most significant thing that you think that isn't relevant and may not matter. Someone may have said something, someone's behaviour may have been a little bit strange. Say it, because it just may be just that one piece, isn't it, of information that's missing. So today we're going to kick off, aren't we, on our case 1 of our 20-day challenge for this campaign for missing people. So this is the April Fabb case, and she was born on the 22nd of April 1955 and disappeared on the 8th of April 1969. And to this day there has been no trace of April at all, ever. She left her home and that was it. She was gone. Now, she was only 13 years old at the time of her disappearance on the 8th of April 1969. Now, she went missing between the villages because this is a UK case, a Norfolk case, and it was Metton and Roughton in Norfolk, and I'll show you the map and you can see it was like a 2-mile sort of bike ride that she was going to go on. So this morning she was doing her stuff and in with her mum and everything else, and she was going to go to her sister's because it was her brother-in-law's birthday, and she brought him some cigarettes and stuff, and I think it was a packet of 10 cigarettes for his birthday, and that was in her bike, in her bag on her bike. She also had a handkerchief in her bag on her bike, and also had like 2.5 pence in old money, which, you know, in 1969 was, you know, a bit of money. Now all this stuff remained there. Now I'm going to say from the beginning, there is a lot of similarities to the Jeanette Tate case that we've done, you know, same age, rural setting, even one Norfolk, one in Devon, but rural settings. A bike was found, discarded, this child's just gone without a trace. So similar on the outset, but it's when you look a little bit deeper, there's a bit different things here going on, I think, but there could be some links. It's been discounted because I think they think it's more local person, but I don't think you can discount anything when you have no evidence to counteract that. You know, there's no evidence in this case at all, not at all. Exactly actually the same as Jeanette Tate's, none at all. So at around 1:40 p.m. on Tuesday the 8th of April 1969, April left her home in Metton to visit her sister's house in this Roughton. Now, she travelled by bicycle that she had picked up this 10 cigarettes. You know, she had this 5.5 pence, you know, old money, in a handkerchief in her saddlebag on her bike, and off she went. Now, she said to her mum, I'm going to my sister's, mum, and I'll talk about the sisters in a little while. Now, the mum said to her, oh, I can't go, love, I've got to do my ironing. You go, and I'll see you soon. Now, that was the last time that her mother had ever seen or spoke to her again. That was it. So she's got on her bike, and we know that about 10 minutes later after that, she was seen in this lane, or in this, you know, I think it was, there was men doing like an Ordnance Survey and different things in these lanes, but she had this blue and white bicycle, and it was seen laying in a field. Now, this was near her home, so like 10 minutes, but before that, she had been seen talking to 2 friends, and I think there was donkeys in one of the field. Now, she just loved animals, she just loved it, and she stopped. That's why they think she stopped at this field opening, because at that time there were donkeys there, and she was stroking the donkeys and everything, and that was it. Within, you know, 10 minutes, her bike then was seen laying in a field. It looked like someone had literally chucked it over the hedgerow into a field. So that was sort of it, really. That's it. There isn't much else, same as Jeanette's. There's not much else on this case at all. You know, and I was saying on the surface, yes, you know, they are very similar. And again, you know, we've said with Jeanette Tate's case that Robert Black was up in the frame for this one. And listen, who's to say that Robert Black didn't do it? You know, this typical him. But he wouldn't, I don't think he would even waste his time of chucking that bike over a hedgerow. I don't think he would. He would have just left it. There's no way he's going to try and hide it. Didn't need to. No one was around. So, there is a footage that I took from someone else that's done this, and I'll leave it in the link so you can watch her thing on it. It's only a short video on it. But there's one of April's friends in this video, and she talks about the bike. She talks about when they were friends many years ago, when they used to ride their bikes everywhere. Now, you talk about 1969, no one was out nicking bikes. I mean, you couldn't leave a bike outside here now. It'd be gone in minutes. Gosh, even if it's chained up, it'd be gone. But in them days, you see, these kids used to leave their bikes lying around and stuff when they'd go back off for the day and have a bit of fun, come back, and then bikes would still be there. So she's always found this issue of this bike not being just thrown over the hedgerow, right? Someone who's took her could have done that. But it was the point that someone picked that bike up within half an hour of little April's disappearance, and took to the police station and said they found this in a field within half an hour. And she's never understood that, because in her day and in that area, you wouldn't think to do that. No one thought to do that. So she's always thought that was a bit strange. Plus, you had a lot of workers in this area, had pipelines going in for gas pipelines and different stuff going in. You know, and I think the police have ruled out that maybe one of the vans or something has hit her. The bike, again, like Jeanette's bike, wasn't damaged in the way where it had been hit. It had been thrown, but it hadn't been hit. There was no blood on the road, there was nothing on the road. They did find a handkerchief actually with blood on it, and it turned out later on that it was blood from a lady that had took her kid out and had fallen over and scraped his knee and that, but little April's handkerchief was still in the saddlebags on her bike, so that was discounted. So really, I think people think that it's someone local because of the workmen in that area. You just don't know. Could it have been black? It's another one, couldn't it? Could have been black. But again, you know, you can't. How many murders can we put onto Robert Black? You know, yeah, I think if it just left the bike and gone, we could have, but no. And I think one of the detectives in this case says that he does think it's a local person, that someone knows something. Listen, someone always knows something. Always.
Why do you pick a bike up in a field? I mean, when we were all about together, I used to go up to Suster Church, chuck our bikes up near the wall, and we would clear off all day. And we would come back and our bike would still be there. So why was that bike picked up and taken to Cromer police station? What was it, half an hour after she went missing? And that is the question, isn't it? Who threw the bike over the hedge? Did she throw it and go off, or did a person hit her, panic, and throw it over the hill, or did somebody mean to? Pipelines being done at the time, and people said she was there, but they walked the pipelines, there was no disturbance. Somebody could have knocked her off a bike and just panicked and took her. You know, nobody will ever know, will they? There was an old marl pit, which is lime. If you put anything in lime, it just disintegrates. But they were digging the sewer pipes at the time, and they walked them, and they said there was no disturbance. You can go on asking questions, can't you, all the time? Why did it happen? But you're never going to know the answer, are you? Well, you might find it one day. What can they do? What can police do? They've covered every corner. You know, what else can be done? You just hope that she's got to be found, but 50 years is a long time, isn't it?
A significant investigation into what happened to April Fabb, who went missing a fortnight before her 14th birthday. Michael Cole was a reporter working for the BBC at the time.
And it was very clear early on that it wasn't just somebody who'd run away, that she'd been abducted and something dreadful had happened to her.
Half a century later, we're still baffled by the case of April Fabb.
It was shortly before 2 o'clock on April the 8th, 1969, that she left her home village in Metton to cycle the 2 miles to her sister's house to give her brother-in-law a birthday present. She stopped close to this field to talk to 2 friends. After that, she simply vanished. 50 years on, what happened to April Fabb remains a mystery.
It's what happened in the 10 or so minutes that April was last seen, to the moment her bicycle was spotted lying in a nearby field, that the police have never been able to account for. With more sophisticated techniques, today's police may have had more success. But despite a huge search in the weeks after she went missing, there was no indication of what happened to a young girl described by those who knew her as polite and home-loving.
I've always felt that there's a local element to April's disappearance. And it may be there are people alive today that have always suspected a family member, a friend, someone more local that they felt uncomfortable about. And it may be as time's gone on, when there's an anniversary or mention of Metton, that person behaves differently. There's a change of behaviour. So that's the sort of information we're very interested in hearing, even 50 years later.
Michael Cole recalls the investigation becoming so desperate, a Dutch clairvoyant was brought in to try and help, but that yielded nothing. Half a century on, her file remains open, but realistically, will this mystery ever be solved?
So let's talk a little bit about April, shall we? Let's give her some life. Let's bring her back into our focus, not just about her disappearance, but about her. Now, this girl was a 13-year-old teenager, had her whole life to live in front of her. She was a shy girl, she was animal mad, she loved animals, and that's why she would have stopped at that field to talk to and stroke them donkeys at that point when they was in that field. That's why she would have done that. She absolutely loved them. She was doted on by her family, and also her family terrier that she doted on, Trudy. She loved Trudy. She loved that dog. She just loved her. And she was just this lovely girl. Her mum and dad were lovely. Her mum was a stay-at-home mum. I think Olive, her name was, her mum. I'll go through it a bit more in a minute. And Ernest, her dad. Now, these people never got over this. You know, she had a couple of sisters. They had moved out. She was the youngest child. You know, the mum had stayed at home to do a bit of ironing for this girl. They was just lovely, lovely people. April loved to collect stamps. You know, she had posters up on her wall and stuff, and then posters on the wall of her favourite bands at that time remained up on her wall, you know, for years and years and years. They never took them down. And you find this with a lot of families that are waiting for someone to come home, that they change nothing. They just can't. Because the minute they start to do that, in their minds, they're really gone, aren't they? And I think this is why they did this. You know, Ernest and Olive were just lovely people who just wanted their child back home. And this was one way, I think, of keeping it. I think she had a little dolly that they kept and stuff, and they kept that for years. And listen, these people have passed away now, and again, they have died without knowing, you know, what happened to their children. And you're going to see a clip of Ernest and Olive. And again, I took this, and I shall put the link to where I got this from, so you can have a look at the full clip of it. I've only used certain clips of it. But you can see in Olive's face, and she says that she dreams about April, you know, walking around the corner, you know, with a man and a child, because she hopes, and in her mind that's probably how she's had to cope with that loss, is to imagine that this child's gone off, met someone, having a life, having a child, and one day she's going to walk back round that corner and say, hello, I'm here. Some people find different ways of coping. Where Ernest, I think, within a month or two, came to the realisation that something had happened to April, and that he was probably never going to see her again. It's how we all react, don't we, I suppose, to grief in our different ways, because these people were grieving.
Ever discovering their daughter's fate. In the early days of the search, they had mixed views as to whether there would be a happy outcome.
Sometimes I dreamt I've seen her come round the corner of our house at Metton with a gentleman and a little child. And I just hope that there is something in that, and one day she'll come home.
Yeah, I used to have hopes for perhaps for a month or so, but after it kept going on and on and on, I think she must have been killed or done something too.
So getting back to her disappearance, I think the first sight, I think, of anything was wrong was on this Tuesday, 8th of April 1969, when this teenager, this young girl, this 13-year-old April, had not returned home, and this was about 10 o'clock at night. Now, after learning that no one really, they'd gone around, everyone spoke to everyone, no one had seen April on that day, apart from the two young school friends that had seen her about 10 minutes after she left her home. That was the last sighting of April Fabb that anyone's ever seen to this day. At this point, when they was ringing around and doing all this, they hadn't had any knowledge of her bike being found, because the person who had picked it up had took it to the police station. And of course, you know, a bike sitting there on its own with no one around, no blood, no nothing. It's just a bike that's been found and someone's handed it in. So of course the parents weren't informed about anything at that point, and that had been taken, hadn't it, to this Cromer police station, and that was discovered, you know, and added really then to these officers' fault then, once they found that she was missing, and that was her bike then that was already in the police station for many, many hours. Then really things then began to hot up, and also they sort of came to realise that this girl was not a runaway. I think once it was quite late into the night, and I think one of the detectives, I think it was detective or chief superintendent, he realised, I think, or Lester his name was, I think, Chief Superintendent Lester. Now he realised, I think, immediately once all this had happened, that this was an abduction, and that he really then tried to do everything he could in this case. This is one of the biggest, you know, hunts for evidence really in the Norfolk force, you know, and the biggest in their history. And I think this case, he says, you know, it stayed with him for about 48, 50 odd years. This case, he never forgot it, because they tried everything to find this girl within their power, and we didn't have in them days CCTV or, you know, footage, or we didn't have dash cams and, you know, door cams and all this stuff, you know, number plate recognition. We had none of that. There was none of that. There was no DNA. There was nothing. There was nothing. So it was a case of eyewitness testimony only, and at that point there was nothing. So it's so frustrating, and they knew it was so frustrating that they searched everywhere, and they did search where the drains had been, or the new drainage was being put in for the gas pipe in, and everything else was being put in. But this is a worry, because there's also other things in this area like salt or lime sort of bogginess, and and I think one of her April's friends have said that about this area as well. If you want to get rid of a body, it wouldn't take long for that body to go. But anyway, it's very strange case, this case, when it comes down to literally, again, we have a child riding her bike, and 10 minutes later she's gone. So the facts of this case really are: at 1:20 in the afternoon that April left her home, she saw two friends playing with a donkey in the field. She stopped, she had a chat. She then resumed her journey. The last sighting of the 13-year-old was by a driver of a Land Rover passing the opposite direction. So she was coming down this way, he was going that way. And she left the hamlet at 14:06, so at 2:06, that was it. 9 minutes later, she was gone. 9 minutes later, she was gone. So I think when I say the bike had been thrown over this bank, this country lane, that hedgerow was 6 foot tall. 6 foot tall. You try and pick up, it's a blue, she was 13, so it's a standard size bike. Probably heavier in them days. It's not like now we have lightweight bikes, don't we? It wouldn't have been in them days. So you're now trying to throw a bike over, and they threw it over. 6 foot high bank. I think there's someone with some strength there. Listen, as time passed, this case, as with many cold cases, especially cold cases, in this area, where there wasn't any of this extra evidence that you could gather, you're relying, aren't you, on people who know something, who may still know something to this day, to come forward, because really that's the only way that this case will be solved in any way. Now listen, most of us know, they've done I think 2012 they've done an age progression photo of her, that because they have to, because there's no evidence to say that she's dead or alive, really, so they have to keep their options open. But when we look at what evidence we have got, we have someone that was passing, they had 9 minutes to take this child from this laneway. 9 minutes. They were strong enough to throw a bike over a 6 foot bank hedgerow. They were strong enough to do that. So they were definitely strong enough to pick up a child. There was no evidence on the roadside or on the lane of an accident. The bike didn't look like it had been an accident. It looked like it had been thrown over, but it hadn't looked like it had been in a car accident. There's just nothing that says that. So really your only conclusion comes down to is this girl was abducted from this laneway. That's what she was. The case is, it's that 9 minute gap in that timeline that holds the key. Now someone someone you've heard speaking about this case, someone that may be acting or acted funny around that time, someone that maybe have done something to you that you don't want to come forward and say. This is a really important case because you had workmen, local people in this area. They must have known this area to have got rid of this body quite quickly. Or it's an opportunist killer, like the same with Jeanette Tate's, that's come past, picked this kid up, and they've gone. They're driving, you're gone. You're gone, aren't you? They're gone. If you know anything about this case, please make it known. It doesn't matter how insignificant you think it is. It doesn't matter how old your information is. If someone's told you something in secret, if someone's told you not to say anything, it's time to come forward and say it, because it's really important that this case is finalised and people, the remaining sisters of April, get some rest from this. I mean, they're in their 70s now, 80s now. They're waiting. People are waiting. Someone always knows something. So please come forward. So thank you. This is case 1. And as we move on to case 2 in our 20 case challenge to show awareness for the missing and the people that won't be coming home this Christmas, I really thank you for watching. So this has been the April Fabb case. This is a young girl that disappeared on the 8th of April 1969, and to this day nothing, not a sight, a hair or anything of her has ever been found. No one's ever come forward with any information. There has been no eyewitnesses apart from the 2 girls that saw and spoke to her while they were stroking the donkey. Her family, or her mum and her dad, have now both passed away without knowing what happened to their child. I really hope that someone out there can really help in this case, or any of the other cases that we are going to be putting up over this missing persons campaign we're doing over the next 20 days, starting from today, the 1st of December 2021. And this will continue on. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time you take to send messages and leave your comments, like our videos, which would be great if you could like, subscribe, hit the bell button. You can follow this case on Spotify, Let's Have a Chat About Murder. You can also follow me on Facebook, where you'll see lots of places that you can donate and stuff to missing persons. I also now put a lot more stuff on Instagram, and so I hope that you'll join me on there too. So until the next time, thanks for watching. Bye bye.